A simple gold wedding ring rests on worn Bible pages. 3 words appear beneath. Please pray for us, November 18th. The post went silent. No explanation, no context. Just Psalm 23 and a ring that carried 40 years of promises. Within minutes, Nashville stopped breathing. Phone calls flooded in. Prayer chains erupted across 50 states. Because when Guy Penrod Clark breaks her silence with that kind of post, something has shattered. Guy Penrod, the voice that filled arenas for 4 decades. The man who made 30,000 people weep with a single note. The anchor of gospel music's most unshakable family. But here's what nobody saw coming. Behind those porch night sessions, behind the canceled concerts last summer, behind Angie's shorter Facebook videos, and Guy's unexplained weight loss, something was consuming him from the inside. October 14th brought 3 words that rewrote everything. Stage 4 cancer. What happened in those final weeks broke the internet. 20 million people watched one video. A father who couldn't finish his own song. 8 children who sang it for him. And one final word whispered at 2:47 p.m. that made heaven lean closer. Stay with us. We're revealing the truth behind gospel music's most devastating goodbye. The foundation, where love and faith became one small Christian college. 1983. Guy Penrod sat in a campus coffee shop, nervously rehearsing for an audition. His voice was good, technically perfect even. But something was missing. Guy Clark walked past, stopped mid-stride, and heard him sing. She watched for a moment, then approached with 5 words that would alter both their destinies forever. You're singing to the wrong audience. Guy looked up, confused. This confident young woman with kind eyes smiled gently. You're performing like you need to impress judges. Sing like you're talking directly to God instead. That conversation lasted 3 hours. Coffee turned cold. The audition was forgotten. They discussed faith, music as worship rather than entertainment, and what it meant to use your voice as a gift rather than a talent. 2 years later, in 1985, they married in a small ceremony. Friends and family filled the church. Guy sang their first dance song himself, his deep voice shaking with emotion as Angie cried happy tears. From that day forward, they were never separated for more than 3 nights. Not once in 40 years. Through touring schedules, recording sessions, and the chaos of raising 8 children, they remained each other's constant. The tour bus became their home on wheels. Bunk beds stacked 3 high held 7 boys who looked exactly like their father. Then came Sarah, their only daughter, when everyone thought the family was complete. Those children didn't grow up with separate bedrooms and personal space. They learned to harmonize because that was survival when sharing tight quarters with siblings. Every night after concerts, while Guy signed autographs and shook hands, Angie gathered all 8 kids in the back lounge. They sang together, not for audiences or applause, just because that's what the Penrod family did. Amazing grace, how great thou art. It is well with my soul. Guy had one rule that seemed simple, but held profound meaning. Never skip verses. Every word matters when you're singing to the Lord. The quiet unraveling. When something felt wrong, summer 2025 arrived with unusual changes. Guy Penrod, who had never canceled a concert in his entire career, suddenly backed out of 3 consecutive weekend performances. The official statement mentioned vocal rest. After 40 years of professional singing, his voice needed a break. Most fans accepted this explanation without question, but those closest to the family noticed different details. Guy looked thinner at church services, not the healthy kind of weight loss from exercise and discipline. the kind that comes from something consuming you from the inside. His eyes carried exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix. Dark circles appeared in photographs. His smile took effort now, like he was lifting something heavy just to appear normal. Angie's weekly Facebook videos, posted faithfully every Monday for years, started changing too. 5-minute updates became 3 minutes, then 90 seconds. Then, sometimes she'd skip weeks entirely without explanation. When she did post, careful observers noticed something else. Her smile took a fraction of a second longer to reach her eyes. Her voice carried a tremor she couldn't quite hide. In August, they drove their youngest daughter, Sarah, to college for freshman year. It should have been a bittersweet milestone. Parents crying happy tears while dropping their baby off at the dorm. Photos in front of the campus sign. Promises to call every Sunday. Instead, Guy had to pull over twice during the 4-hour drive home. His stomach hurt so badly he couldn't sit upright. He tried to laugh it off and blamed it on the campus cafeteria food from lunch. Angie didn't laugh. She gripped the steering wheel tighter and made a mental note to schedule a doctor's appointment. They were both in their 50s now. Bodies don't work the same at this age as they did at 25. Still, something whispered in the back of her mind that this wasn't normal aging. This was different. She scheduled blood work for October, just to be safe, just to rule out anything serious. The diagnosis, when forever became finite. Guy woke up early that Tuesday morning. Simple breakfast, oatmeal, black coffee. He kissed Angie goodbye the way he'd done 10,000 times before, climbed into his truck, and drove to the clinic alone. She stayed home working on letters, maybe planning her weekly video. After 40 years of marriage, comfortable silence felt natural between them. He'd be home by lunch, just routine blood work. Nothing to worry about. At noon, her phone rang. The doctor's voice sounded different, tight, careful, forced. "Mrs. Penrod, I need both of you back at the office immediately." Her stomach dropped. Doctors never use that word unless something has gone terribly wrong. They drove back together, wrapped in heavy silence. Guy reached across the center console, took her hand, and held it tight. He didn't let go the entire drive. The office felt cold, sterile. Generic landscape paintings hung crooked on white walls. A box of tissues sat on the desk, recently used by other shattered families who'd heard devastating news in this same chair. The doctor wasted no time. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. 3 words, 7 syllables. Everything shattered. He kept talking. Liver involvement. Surgery impossible at this stage. Treatment might extend life 3 to 6 months maximum. Without treatment, much less time remained. Angie later described the moment as surreal. The room spun wildly. High-pitched ringing filled her ears. She couldn't process the words. This wasn't real. Not Guy. Not her husband, who never got sick, who stood strong as an oak tree through every storm. Guy reached over and took her shaking hand. He squeezed gently. Then, in that same deep, unshakable voice that had comforted millions during altar calls, he looked directly at the doctor. "Well, I guess we're going home to Jesus sooner than we planned." The doctor sat frozen. 20 years of delivering terminal diagnoses, and nobody had ever responded like this. Guy asked one simple question. "Can I keep singing until the end?" The doctor, caught off guard, nodded slowly. "As long as your body allows it." Guy stood, helped Angie to her feet, and walked toward the door. "Come on, sweetheart. We need to tell our kids." The journey, singing through the darkness. 5 weeks of silence. Only their closest circle knew the devastating truth. The gospel community remained puzzled as to why Guy wasn't scheduling concerts, why Angie's weekly videos had vanished completely. During those precious weeks, the Penrod family lived intentionally. Prayer became their constant companion. Every evening brought songs together, even as Guy's once powerful voice weakened and cracked on notes he'd hit effortlessly for decades. They cooked favorite meals, retold cherished stories, and flipped through photo albums spanning 40 years. By mid-November, Angie recognized the moment had arrived, not for attention or sympathy. Guy's entire life had been lived on concert stages, captured in recordings, shared with millions. His death deserved the same transparency as those who'd loved him through his music. November 18th arrived. She opened her Bible to Psalm 23. "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want." She slipped off her wedding ring, that simple gold band Guy had placed on her finger 40 years earlier. She positioned it carefully on the worn page. One photograph, 3 words typed beneath, "Please pray for us," posted simultaneously to Instagram and Facebook. Then she placed her phone face down, walked away without reading responses, and returned to the living room where Guy rested. She sat beside him, took his hand, and stayed. Nashville erupted within minutes. Bill Gaither called first, the legendary producer who'd launched Guy's career decades before. His words came broken through sobs. "What can I do? What do you need?" The Isaacs posted themselves singing through tears. No explanation needed. The gospel family understood immediately. Churches from Ohio to Texas organized all-night prayer vigils. Strangers sent quilts, handwritten letters, and emotional videos to the Penrod farm. Each message carried a testimony. Guy's voice had led them to Jesus years ago. His music rescued crumbling marriages. His testimony pulled desperate souls back from suicide, addiction, and divorce. One woman shared how she'd planned to end her life 20 years earlier. Then she heard Guy sing "Then Came the Morning" on the radio. If morning could follow history's darkest night, maybe morning could come for her too. The Penrod family found themselves surrounded by grief, both intimately personal and impossibly vast. Guy had touched millions. Now millions mourned alongside them. Guy made one final decision that would define his remaining days. Every evening, despite pain medications making his hands tremble, he grabbed his old acoustic guitar. He'd shuffle to the front porch, settle into his favorite rocking chair, and sing whatever hymn filled his heart. Tyler or another son would position a phone on a tripod, streaming live to Facebook. They called it Porch Nights. No professional production, no backing tracks or studio lighting. Just a dying man, a guitar, and songs that had defined his ministry. Thousands watched nightly. Then hundreds of thousands. 10 days before his death, Guy began singing "I'll Know I'll See You Again." The first verse came perfectly. But reaching the chorus, singing "Knowing You'll Be There," he looked directly at Angie sitting just beyond the camera. His voice shattered. Tears poured down his weathered face. He couldn't continue. Angie rose, walked over, and wrapped her arms around him. They wept together. Then Tyler picked up where his father stopped. Jesse joined. Then Logan. Soon, all 8 children stood on that porch, singing the song their father couldn't finish, while Guy and Angie held each other through broken sobs. The final moments, a sacred goodbye. November 24th arrived quietly. Death usually does. There's a myth that people die dramatically with final speeches and perfectly timed goodbyes. Reality is much gentler and much harder. Guy woke up that morning and could barely speak. His breathing was shallow, labored, Hospice had brought in a hospital bed and set it up in the living room so he wouldn't have to be isolated upstairs. The whole family was there, all 8 children, all the grandchildren, including 3 who were too young to understand why everyone was crying. Angie had them position the bed facing the kitchen. Guy could see the table where they'd shared so many meals, so many songs, so many ordinary moments that had made up an extraordinary life. Around mid-morning, Guy opened his eyes. He looked at each of his children one by one, as if memorizing their faces for heaven. "Tyler," he whispered, voice barely audible. "You take care of your mama's heart, okay? She's tougher than all of us, but she's going to need your shoulder." Tyler could only nod, tears streaming as he clutched his father's hand. Jesse, Logan, Joe, and Guy continued. Naming his middle sons, keep those boys in check. Teach them to fish. Teach them to pray. Teach them to say, "Yes, ma'am," and mean it. The 3 were sobbing, remembering camping trips where their dad had taught them that real men weren't afraid to get their hands dirty. "Lacey, Zach, Caleb," Guy said, looking at his younger sons, "my singers, never stop harmonizing. That's me smiling down when you hit that high note in Amazing Grace." His voice broke then. The 3 boys leaned in, pressing their foreheads against their father's chest. "And Sarah," he whispered, "my baby girl." Sarah had been standing at the foot of the bed, trying to be strong. When her father said her name, she broke. She crawled onto the bed, buried her face in his chest, and sobbed, "I'm so sorry I won't be there to walk you down the aisle, Daddy." Guy lifted his hand. Even though it clearly took enormous effort, he stroked her hair. "You already gave yourself to the most important groom. Every time you sang about Jesus." Guy smiled then, really smiled. "But I'll be watching from the front row in heaven. And I'll cry harder than anybody." Angie, holding his other hand the entire time, leaned close to his ear. Since early morning, she'd been singing softly, just loud enough for him to hear. Old hymns, their wedding song, lullabies she'd sung to their babies 40 years ago. Now she started singing, "It Is Well With My Soul." The children joined one by one. Their voices were shaking but powerful, creating the kind of harmony that only comes from a lifetime of singing together. When they reached the line, "Peace like a river attendeth my way," Guy's lips moved. He was trying to sing along. Then, as they sang the next line, "When sorrows like sea billows roll," Guy Penrod sang one final word. Well, the room fell completely silent. Someone later said you could hear the clock stop ticking. Angie kissed his forehead and whispered, "Go on home, love. We'll catch up." Aftermath and legacy. Love that doesn't end. The funeral was small, family only, exactly as Guy had requested. Bill Gaither tried to give a eulogy but couldn't get through more than 2 minutes. He walked up to the casket, placed his hand on it, and said just one thing. Guy Penrod didn't just sing the gospel. He lived it out loud. They buried him on the farm under an old oak tree where he used to take his morning coffee. The gravestone is simple. Guy Penrod, husband, father, voice for the voiceless. And underneath, one line from his favorite hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul." Angie still lives on the farm. The porch swing still rocks gently in the Tennessee breeze. She keeps a folded quilt on it, one that Guy used during those final porch nights. Sometimes she sits there alone, running her fingers over the worn spot where Guy's hand used to rest. The kitchen table is still set for 10. When grandchildren visit, they ask why Papa's chair is empty. Their mothers always say, "Papa's singing in the big choir now, baby." He's got the best seat in heaven. Every week, Angie posts a short video from the porch. Sometimes she reads letters from fans. Sometimes the kids sing a verse of an old hymn their father loved. In the most recent video, all 8 children sit around that kitchen table, passing a single microphone between them, singing "I'll Know I'll See You Again" in perfect 4-part harmony. When they finish, Tyler looks directly into the camera. "Dad, we're keeping the song alive. See you at the reunion." On November 24th, the world lost a voice, but heaven gained a baritone that makes the angels lean in closer to listen. Somewhere on a farm outside Nashville, a family is learning that grief and gratitude can live in the same house. Because the most important lesson Guy Penrod ever taught wasn't about music or faith or even family. It was this: love doesn't stop when the song ends. It just changes the key. Guy Penrod's story reminds us that life's most powerful moments aren't found on stages or in spotlights. They're found around kitchen tables, on front porches, in quiet moments when faith becomes real, and love proves stronger than death. His family didn't just lose a father and husband. The gospel community lost a voice that carried heaven's message for 4 decades. But what they gained was something more profound. A testimony that shows us how to face our darkest valleys with grace, dignity, and unshakable faith. If this story touched your heart, honor Guy's memory by hitting that like button, so you never miss stories of faith, family, and the power of love that transcends even death. The Penrod family taught us that it's okay to grieve deeply, because grief is just love with nowhere to go. But they also showed us that faith doesn't remove the pain. It just gives us someone to walk through it with. Until next time, keep singing, keep loving, keep believing. Because, as Guy would say, it is well with my soul.